So you might be thinking, Mr. Barker, those quarter note, half note, whole note rhythms, easy. I really wish it were more complex. Well, I've got some good news for you. There's more. First, let's talk about how we count eighth notes. So if we have a measure full of eighth notes, we will count those 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So when we had all quarter notes, we had each note on the downbeat. When we switch those to eighth notes, now we have a note on the downbeat and a note on the upbeat. Every single upbeat is and. The only thing that changes is the downbeat, which we give 1, 2, 3, and 4, depending on which beat it's on. So on the downbeat is a number, on the upbeat is and. So like our quarter notes and half notes and whole notes, there's a limited number of rhythms that we can make when we use eighth notes, and I like to call these rhythmic words. So let's assume that we're operating with 2 beats here. In every 2 beats, we could have a half note, 2 quarter notes, 4 eighth notes, a quarter note and 2 eighth notes, 2 eighth notes and a quarter note, a dotted quarter note with an eighth note, an eighth note followed by a dotted quarter note, and an eighth note with a quarter note in the middle, and then another eighth note. Now let's go through each of these rhythms, and I'll put 2 beats of rest in between each rhythm. We'll start with the half note. 1, 1, 2. 1 and 2 and. 1, 2 and. 1 and 2. 1 and. 1 and. 1 and. The first 5 or so are pretty straightforward. But once we get to those dotted rhythms and that syncopated rhythm, the eighth note, quarter note, eighth note, it gets a little trickier. So the first thing that you'll notice is that these 2 rhythms are both counted 1 and. The difference being the and is a different and depending on which rhythm we look at. So this first rhythm with the dotted quarter note and an eighth note, we beat 1, but then we're not counting the next and or the next 2. And then that last eighth note is the and of 2. The other rhythm where we have an eighth note and then a dotted quarter note, we immediately have 1 followed by and. So that dotted quarter note is the and of 1, not the and of 2. So that's what makes these 2 rhythms different. This other rhythm here with the eighth note, the quarter note, and the eighth note, you have to remember to still count 2 in your head. So let's look at it again. 1 and. So you'll notice that I don't say the 2 because it's covered by the quarter note in the middle. So we have our 1 and, then 2 isn't counted out loud, and then the last and. Now, eighth notes also have a counterpart, eighth rests, which look like this. You can throw them into any spot that an eighth note would normally go. Let's do a couple practice rhythms. Here's the first one. So you'll notice we have 2 of our words here. We have our first word, which is the quarter note and 2 eighth notes. And then we have our second word, which is the eighth note followed by a quarter note followed by an eighth note. So we recognize both of these from our list that we had before. So now let's put the counts in. That first one was counted 1, 2, and. And we have a secret and in the middle there. And then that second one, we had 1 and. But we're going to change the 1 to a 3 because this is beat 3 of the measure. Now we have 4 beats in our measure instead of just 2. So if we do this rhythm all together, 1, 2, and 3, and. Feel free to stop the video, go back and practice that a couple times on your own. Here's another practice rhythm. So this one looks trickier than it is. Let's break it in half to see if we can figure out our words. So this first word we recognize, it's our eighth in our dotted quarter. So that's going to be 1 and. Now we skip 2 and because that's part of the dotted quarter. Now this next one, there's a rest thrown in there. But if we turn the rest into a note, we'll recognize that it's our rhythm that's 2 eighth notes and a quarter. So it will be 3 and 4, but we're not going to say that 3 out loud because it's a rest. But we're still going to think it. So together this rhythm is 1 and 4. And feel free to pause and go back and practice that a couple times too. So to put it very simply, you really want to have a strong knowledge of those rhythmic words, the 2 quarter notes, the quarter note and 2 eighth notes, the 2 eighth notes and a quarter note. Because if you can recognize those smaller chunks, it's going to be much easier to read rhythms as they get more complex because you'll realize that it's just these fragments put together. So the more comfortable you can get with these fragments, the better. Make sure you reach out to me if you have questions. You know how to do it by now. Go to the bottom of the page, click the button, set up an appointment with me. I'd be happy to help you. Good luck.